Let's start the podcast. Your average fight fan.
All right, guys, welcome back. Your average fight fan. I am Juan. This is episode 11. We're going to be talking about last night's UFC Fight Night, Anthony Smith versus Aleksandar Rakic. It was a pretty good one. Once again, they surprised me. UFC is known for delivering even when there's no big names on the card. So they know what they're doing. Can't take anything away from them. So let's get right into it. Let's start off with just the main card. I could go into the whole card, but I'll just do the main card, which was only 4 fights. The prelims did have the first 4 fights ended by submission. So if you started watching it from the from the beginning of the card, you thought it was going to be a good night. Unfortunately for, I guess, everyone, after those first 4 fights, the rest of all of the fights ended in decision. So it wasn't the night that we thought it was going to be, the way it started out, but it was still a decent card. Some good fighters out there. Let's get right into it. Just talk about the main card here. We got Ricardo Lamas against Bill Algeo. Ricardo Lamas goes by the nickname The Bully, and Bill goes by Senor Perfecto. Why? I don't know. I don't know, but it's kind of funny. So Ricardo Lamas is now 38 years old. He is an American. He's trained in numerous places, but he's got a record of 19-8, or at least he did coming into this fight. 6 knockouts, 5 submissions. He was coming off a loss. He hasn't fought since last June, so just over a year. That loss was to Calvin Kattar, and it was by TKO. Other than that, though, he's had a pretty decent career. You know, he's had some ups and downs, but he's beat some good guys. Definitely some good victories in his career, but he's also lost to most of the guys in the top of the division. He's got good striking, and he's a good wrestler, so he's always used that to his benefit. But being that he's a good striker, that also has become somewhat of a deficit for him because, you know, sometimes he gets knocked out. So, you know, in past recent years, he's been a little bit too cocky with his striking because, you know, he is a good striker. He's got knockout power. So, like I said, detriment to his stand-up would be that he does try to get in there in the pocket and, you know, one thing leads to another. Sometimes the Cody Garbrandt effect happens and you just think you're too good and you get knocked out. But anyway, he was fighting Bill Algeo, who's 31 years old. He's from Pennsylvania. He was actually making his UFC debut with a record of 13-4. He's got 3 knockouts, 6 submissions. He's coming off a win in another organization. This was technically not his first fight under the UFC umbrella. He was featured on Dana's Contender Series, but he lost that fight, so he was not given a contract. After that fight, he went off back to his organization, won that fight, and then was given his debut for this fight. Just some odds here. Ricardo Lamas was the favorite at -280, and Algeo was the underdog at +265. I had Ricardo winning 2-1, with the last round being a 10-8 round. It was pretty dominant. I believe the judges had the same score. I believe the judges had the third round as a 10-8 round. He showed that, look, at 38 years old, ups and downs throughout his career, he's still pretty dangerous when it comes to, you know, people. Let's say because he's not. Neither one of these guys are ranked. So when you're talking about guys outside the top 15, he's still pretty dangerous. You know, you give him the right opponent, he can be dangerous. I don't think he should be fighting anybody in the top 15 anymore. But when you're talking about people outside the top 15, like him being the gatekeeper for that division, I think he's still pretty good. And I think that if he wants to continue to fight, like I said, outside the top 15, he could still have a decent, you know, career for however many years he has left. So congratulations to Ricardo Lamas. And for Bill, Senor Perfecto, he'll be fine. He's a decent fighter. He's strong. He's tall. He'll come back. All right. Moving on to the second fight in the main card. We had a women's flyweight bout between Yeon, who goes by Fire Fist, against Alexa Grasso. Yeon is actually 30 years old. She's from South Korea. She's ranked number 14 in the division. She comes in with a record of 9-2. She had two knockouts and 3 submissions, and she was coming off a win. Alexa Grasso is 27 years old. She's from Mexico. She's unranked. She came in with a record of 11-3 with 4 knockouts, and she was actually coming off a loss to Carla Esparza. But before that, she did beat a top girl in Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who, if you know who Karolina is, you know she's a cutie pie, but she's also dangerous. She's one of my favorite fighters in that division. Not just because she's hot, but because she's a good fighter. So they were fighting for, again, the top of the division, ranked number 14 for Yeon Kim, and Alexa Grasso was trying to break that top 15 ranking. And honestly, I think that the difference in this fight was that Grasso mixed her attacks up where Yeon Kim did not. Yeon Kim was throwing just about everything to the head. She did throw random strikes here and there to the body and to the legs, but for the most part, her attacks were aimed at the head, where Grasso just mixed it up completely to the head, to the body, to the legs. And it was just an all-around more dominant outing, in my opinion, for Grasso. She was even able to take down Yeon Kim in the 3rd round. You know, she outstruck her. Grasso was able to outstrike Kim 123-85 in total strikes. And I do think the first round was very, very even. It was a difficult round to score. But I also think that rounds 2 and 3 were clearly won by Grasso, which even if, let's say, they did give the first round to Yeon Kim, which is possible because, like I said, it was very, very close. By winning the 2nd and 3rd round in the way that she did, I think that Grasso clearly won this fight by unanimous decision. And by winning, she should move into the top 15. Hopefully, because, you know, Yeon Kim was ranked number 14. Hopefully, she would be in that number, at least number 14. But whatever happens, she's in the top 15 now, and she can start calling out girls in the division, you know, to try to move herself up in the rankings. So congratulations to Alexa Grasso for the big win. And let's see what happens with her career going forward. She's a good fighter. She's young. You know, she's got a good base. She's a good wrestler, good striker. So she should be pretty good going forward. Let's see how her career progresses going forward now that she's in the top 15. So again, congratulations to Grasso. And we're going to move on now to the co-main event, which was a welterweight bout, 170 pounds. You had Ruthless Robbie Lawler taking on the Haitian sensation, Neil Magny. Robbie Lawler is now 38 years old also. He's ranked number 13. He was coming with a record of 28-15, 20 knockouts. 20 knockouts, 1 submission. But he was coming off 3 straight losses before this fight. Tough to, you know, lose 3 in a row and then go up against somebody like Neil Magny. Now, if you don't know who Neil Magny is, this guy he's just a cardio machine. He's got cardio for days. He never stops moving. He's always either taking you down or clinching you against the cage or wrestling. You know, this guy's just a cardio machine. His pace and his pressure is unlike most guys in any division. He's one of these guys that just never stops moving forward, throwing different strikes. He's always in absolutely great shape, and that always works to his advantage. He doesn't really have holes in his game. I mean, everybody has obviously weaknesses, but the holes in his game are very minimal. And like I said, he uses all that stuff to his benefit. And in this case, you know, he's 33. He's 6'3". I think he might be the tallest. If he's not the tallest, he's one of the tallest guys in the division. He's from Illinois, but he trains in Denver, so he trains at altitude. That's obviously to his advantage. Ranked number 14. I've spoken about this before. I don't see how he could possibly be number 14. It doesn't make any sense at all. But he came in with a record of 24-7, 7 knockouts, 3 submissions, coming off back-to-back wins. This was your typical striker versus wrestler. Obviously, Robbie Lawler being the striker and Neil Magny being the wrestler. You know, Magny was able to dominate in the clinch. He was able to dominate with the wrestling and landing strikes where Robbie was not able to even throw those. This fight was similar to Robbie Lawler against Colby Covington, where Magny was just always first, throwing first or clinching first, and he just wouldn't allow Robbie to get his strikes off. You know, the nickname Ruthless was 100% Robbie Lawler. Just, I don't think that's him anymore. I don't think the Ruthless of old is now the Ruthless of 38-year-old Robbie Lawler. I think the Ruthless of old is no longer, and unfortunately, you know, because this guy was so exciting to watch. He was just one of the craziest, most badass dudes when he was at the top of the division, when he was a champion defending the title. And even before that, he was just always an exciting guy to watch. But now it's like, man, Robbie Lawler is just not the same guy anymore. And I feel bad because I used to be a huge fan of this guy, and I feel bad that now his career has come to this where you just kind of, he doesn't throw much because I always feel like he's one step behind his opponents, and I don't know, man. It's sad. But anyway, I think Neil Magny did win all 3 rounds. Which, if you know Neil Magny, that is usually the case. When he fights his opponents, he usually, with his pace and the pressure and the cardio, he usually wins all 3 rounds. With this win, he moves to 17 wins in the UFC welterweight division. 17. That's only 2 behind the most wins in the division, which is GSP, which is 19. And this goes and makes my argument for why he's ranked at number 14 even more valid. It makes 0 sense that this guy is ranked number 14. He's got the second most wins in the entire division, in the history of this division, but he's ranked number 14. That makes no sense. How does that make any? He's about to break the all-time leading wins record for the division, but he's ranked number 14. What are we doing? How is he not ranked in the top 5? Dana, matchmakers, guys that have Twitter fingers and just sit behind the computer and rank these guys. What are you doing? Stop eating Cheetos, get out of your mom's basement, and realize that this guy's way better than number 14. Stop it. He needs to be in the top 10. He needs to be in the top 5. Enough. Enough with the 14th ranked. All right? God. Jesus, I don't understand what the hell's wrong with these people. Anyway, let's move on. Speaking of 3-rounders, we did have a 3-round main event. It was a light heavyweight bout at 205 pounds. You had Anthony Lionheart Smith, he's 32, against Aleksandar Rakic. He goes by the nickname Rocket. He's 28. Aleksandar Rakic is 6'5", and Anthony Smith is 6'4". Anthony being from Omaha, Nebraska, he's ranked number 5 in the division. He came in with a record of 33-15. 18 knockouts, 12 submissions. The guy's got an awesome record. But, again, he's coming off a loss to Glover Teixeira, where Aleksandar Rakic, with a record of 12-2, 4 of those wins in the UFC. He does have a 4-1 record in the UFC. He does have 9 knockouts and 1 submission. He was also coming off a loss. His loss was to Volkan Ozdemir. After that loss, he actually moved his training camp to ATT. He was training in ATT. Both guys coming off a loss. They're both obviously trying to get back into that win column and work their way up to that title shot. And again, in the supposed post-John Jones era of this light heavyweight division, we'll see if that's true or not. I said this before. This opens up doors for guys who didn't have those doors to the title shot before. So the path to a title shot for these guys is now open, where maybe it wasn't before. Rakic he has a heavy kickboxing style, but in this particular fight, he showed that he's not just a kickboxer. He showed a different side to his game. He showed that he's a very good wrestling-based ground game now, and that showed tremendously in this fight. I mean, you're talking about, Anthony Smith is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, where Rakic is a purple belt. To get the purple belt, you could say he's been doing it for, let's say 2 years, maybe more, maybe depending on who you train with and how often you train, you can get the purple belt in 2 years, but let's just say he's been doing it for 3 years, which I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate, but let's just say in terms of jiu-jitsu time, let's just say he's been doing it for 3 years, where to get the black belt, some people take 10 years, some people take 15 years, some people take 4 years. It's 4 years is not really accurate anymore, but that's what BJ Penn said he did. He said he got the black belt in 4 years, but let's just say the average person takes 10 years to get the black belt. So if you saw this fight, you know that a black belt should at least have his, an advantage over a purple belt, right? That's usually what happens, but it wasn't the case in this fight. I'm going to go round by round here. Right away, round 1, Rakic starts landing some nasty leg kicks. Pretty devastating to watch. Nasty leg kicks. I'd say about probably a minute and a half in, he landed 2 back-to-back leg kicks that Smith could not take, and he just went down. And honestly, while watching this fight, I really thought this was the end of the fight. Smith was covering up like a man who really had no way out. He had nothing else to do but cover up and wait for the ref to stop it. But fortunately for Anthony Smith, I think, in my opinion, Rakic did not do what he needed to do to end this fight early. And Smith was able to get up, withstand this initial onslaught, and reverse it to where he got back up to his feet and was able to clinch Rakic against the cage. He was already hurt to the legs with all these nasty leg kicks that, like I said, put him down. So he figured, why not try to take his back and submit him? So that's what he did. He jumped on Rakic's back. Unfortunately, that lasted just about 5 seconds, and Rakic kind of took him off, and landed back on top again. He was able to control the rest of the round with, like I said before, top control, ground and pound, and just showed that, man, this guy does have a top game, and apparently his wrestling is not what people thought it was. So I gave that round 10-9 to Rakic. Round 2, again, the kicks, they were there, they continued, and they continued to hurt Smith. Rakic was clearly, and I mean clearly, the stronger fighter in there. While his back was against the cage. Now, again, this is one of the only things that Anthony Smith did well in this fight. He was able to clinch against the cage, but then again, he didn't do it well enough because he wasn't there long enough, and he wasn't able to withstand the strength of Rakic. Rakic was able to, with his back against the cage, get the underhooks and throw Anthony Smith to the ground from the clinch. I'm talking about throw this guy on the ground. From there, it was just more top control, more ground and pound. And for most of the time remaining in the round, it was Rakic on top. Once again, I gave that round to Rakic, 10-9, making it 2-0 for Rakic. When you're up 2-0, your opponent really has very few ways to win. Either knockout or submission is pretty much the only way they're going to win. Round 3 was more of the same. The kicks were there. They were landing. They were hurting Smith. So what does Smith do? Right away, he goes for a takedown. That's, when you're hurt, when you can't really use your legs, your striking is not there anymore, you go for a takedown, and that's what he did. Only problem was Rakic reversed it and landed on top. Well, at that point, he set up shop and just controlled the rest of the round with ground and pound and just top control. And, that's pretty much how this fight went. Round 1, top control, Rakic. Round 2, top control, Rakic. Round 3, you guessed it, top control, Rakic. The only difference was that he was on top control and dominated so much in round 3 that I gave him a 10-8 round. I'm pretty sure that the refs gave him that as well. I'm not 100% sure about that, but in my opinion, it was a 10-8 round. I mean, you're talking about top control time in total was 12 minutes and 16 seconds for Rakic. Top control in total timing for Smith was 5 seconds. Total 5 seconds out of 3 rounds. I have to remind you, Anthony Smith is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Rakic is a purple belt. That's a huge difference in time of, training, practice, overall time of being in a gi, not a gi. That's a huge difference. In skill level, it's huge. But apparently the big difference in this was not the jiu-jitsu. The difference in this fight was the strength of Rakic and his wrestling. People do not see this guy as a wrestler, but maybe they need to start now because his wrestling was very, very good. Again, the difference in time was huge, and then the difference in total strikes was also huge. The total strikes landed were 136-20 in favor of Rakic. Overall, this was a very, very dominant win for Aleksandar Rakic, who's, not a big name, and he's coming into this division trying to make a splash, and what better way to do that than to take out the number 5 guy in that way? This by winning this fight and beating Anthony Smith, he should be in the top 5 now. That should put him in the top 5, and he thinks he is. And by doing that, they asked him, who do you want next? And he said, I want the winner of Blachowicz and Reyes, who, they should be fighting next for the vacant title. And he said, I want the winner of that fight. I want next at the title. So we'll see what happens with the division. I mean, whether John Jones leaves or not, whether he vacates the title, whether he moves to heavyweight or stays at light heavyweight, or maybe doesn't vacate the title, moves up to heavyweight, wins a title. He tries to be a two-division champion. Whatever happens with this division, it's going to be interesting because the guys that are coming up, they're getting nastier and nastier. And let's be honest, if you watch John Jones' previous fight, his last fight, many people, including myself, thought he lost that fight. So his competition is getting better and better. And honestly, he's not getting, his skill level is not diminishing. I just don't think that he's training as much. I don't think he's motivated as much. I don't think that he's the same fighter that he was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, where he was just dominating guys and it wasn't even close. That's not the case anymore. Jon Jones is still, in my opinion, one of the best fighters ever. If it wasn't for the steroids, he might be the best or the greatest of all time. But you have to take into account the steroids, and you have to take into account the drugs and all the shit that he does outside the cage. If it wasn't for that, I would consider him the greatest of all time. But because of that, I can't. But I have to see and I have to respect his career and his skill level and everything else. He's still one of the best fighters in any division. But it is not the same as it was 4 or 5 years ago, where he used to dominate guys. Wasn't even close. He would just finish guys in wherever he wanted. That's not the case anymore. And these guys know it. And like I said, his last fight, many people, including myself, thought he lost that fight. However, on paper, he won. So technically, he's still undefeated. But if you want to be technically sound as far as on paper, his record does show that he has one loss, which is bullshit, obviously. Anybody who knows his career knows that was a bullshit loss. He got disqualified for using the 12-6 elbow, which means you're striking somebody with your elbows going straight down from top to bottom. It's a stupid rule. It's always been a dumb rule. And that's his only loss on paper. So we'll see what happens. If he does move up to heavyweight, I want to see what happens. I want to see who he fights and what happens there. And I really want to see what happens with this light heavyweight division. You know, it's going to be interesting no matter what happens. But we just have to wait and see. You know, for now, it's just a Twitter game where he said I'm vacating the title and blah 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 and this and that. I'm moving up to heavyweight. But the UFC has not confirmed that. The UFC has not confirmed the fight. The UFC has not confirmed a date, an opponent, nothing. So as of right now, as of today, Jon Jones is still the light heavyweight champion, and we'll see what happens. They have not confirmed a fight for a vacant title yet. None of that stuff's been confirmed, so we'll see what happens. If it is, awesome. If it's not, we'll see what happens. All right. That is all that I have for you guys today. Again, I know it's a short episode. There's not much going on in the world of MMA right now. I'll try to, do some more research for our next episode. Maybe even then, the next fight card is not a great one either. And I don't mean a great one by there not being good fighters on there. I'm just saying it's not a good card. It's not a great card because there's not big names on it. Aleksandar Overeem is the main event, but he's not fighting a big name, so it gets a little tricky. And of course, when you're doing a podcast about MMA and fighters, it's tough to talk about all these people and all these great fighters when there's not a lot of big names on there. And let's be honest, I'd say now probably more than 60% of MMA fans are just your casual fan who likes to see big names. Maybe even more than that, maybe 70%, maybe 75%. I don't know, but it's clearly much, much more than your diehard fans like me who know every fighter, who know all the stats about every fighter. Like, you want to get in there and do your research and learn. And those type of fans, let's be honest, there's just not enough anymore. And it is what it is. I mean, it's a huge sport. It's growing, and just like any huge sport, you're going to have tons and tons of fans that just like watching the main event, and that's the truth, and it's okay. You know what? It's better that way, because the more people you have watching, the more money this sport makes, and the bigger it gets, and that's why the UFC is now on ESPN, and they're considered one of the top 5 big sports in the US now. In my opinion, top 4, because the NHL has dropped considerably in fans and just about everything. So in my opinion, it's top 4 sports. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. I just want to say a big thank you to all the listeners. I want to say a big thank you for everyone who's subscribed. And if you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed, if you would do me a huge favor and you'd help out the channel a ton. Just click that subscribe button. If you haven't already, give me a like, leave a comment. Share this with your friends. You can follow me on social media. I will put the links in the description. I have a Facebook, I have a Twitter, all that good stuff. I have Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. All my stuff will be in the description. As always, I am Juan. This is your average fight fan. Stay safe out there. Thank you again. Good night.
Your average fight fan.